What's up everybody, I'm HoopsandHipHop. So when it comes to seizing the day, as the saying goes, the Pokemon Company has always naturally done a pretty good job. They've even done a pretty good job of listening to fan requests, as we can see with Pokemon Following You in Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, and even just the fact that we're getting a main series game on a home console with the Switch. However, there have also been some golden opportunities that the Pokemon Company completely failed to capitalize on, and in this video I'm going to be covering what I believe are Pokemon's 5 biggest missed opportunities. We're going to be covering a little bit of everything here, so let's go ahead and jump right in. The first missed opportunity on this list is that we could have had a legitimate, awesome Pokemon game developed by Square Enix, but instead we got a mobile game in 2006 that was Japan exclusive. Now, I did mention this game in last week's Pokemon Games You'll Never Play video, so check that out if you haven't, and I promise this is the last time I'll mention this game because I've already talked about it plenty, but I can't help but feel like this was a huge missed opportunity because it just doesn't make any sense for a huge, ginormous publisher and developer like Square Enix, who is known for making great RPGs, and Pokemon is a great RPG, they finally get to work together, and Square Enix ends up making this mobile game in 2006, so a very primitive mobile game called Pokemate, which isn't even really a game, it's a messaging application with a Pokemon theme, so it's super simple, and it didn't even make it out of Japan. Now, Square Enix and Nintendo have kind of had their differences over the years, ever since the Super Nintendo days when they kind of had a falling out, but I can't help but feel like if they already came together and agreed to have a game made, even if it's as small of a game as a mobile game, I just can't help but feel like we could have came together for something so much bigger. There's so much wasted talent in a Square Enix Pokemon partnership if you're just making a mobile game. It doesn't make any sense to not make anything except a huge, big, grand, amazing RPG crossover game in the veins of like an XD Coliseum sort of situation. I could see Square Enix making a phenomenal Coliseum-esque game, and it would have been fantastic to see either on the GameCube or the Wii, but instead we got stuck with a really stupid cell phone game and a lot of disappointed thoughts on what could have been. Now, this next one might seem like it's a little bit out of left field for some of you, but I really do feel like it's a huge missed opportunity, and that would be the fact that Pokemon Battle Revolution, the home console Pokemon Stadium-esque game for the Wii, did not end up being the sequel to Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness and Coliseum, despite being developed by the same exact people. Pokemon Coliseum and XD Gale of Darkness were both developed and released for the GameCube by Genius Sonority, and Genius Sonority is the same exact company who developed Pokemon Battle Revolution. Now, given the fact that Pokemon Coliseum and XD Gale of Darkness were not only great games, but also insanely popular, and they were a sequel to one another, just really makes you feel like there should have been an XD Coliseum 3, and the fact that we did actually get another game from the same developer on the very next console in Nintendo's line of home consoles, but it ended up being something completely different and unrelated, just really seems like a huge giant ball was dropped there. Now, like I've been mentioning, Pokemon Battle Revolution plays much more similarly to Stadium than it does XD or Coliseum. However, it doesn't even do a good job of recapturing the Pokemon Stadium games from the Nintendo 64 that we know and love, because even though I've only played it briefly, it very much feels like a very simple, watered down, not well-made game that just doesn't really even hold up to Stadium, let alone Coliseum and XD. I really just don't understand why they decided to go this different direction with their third Pokemon game when their first two were such a great hit and really garnered a lot of fans that still to this day want to see another game in the franchise. So just really a shame that this ultimately went the direction it did, and it's really just disappointing and a huge missed opportunity. Now, this third pick on the list really is kind of a black sheep because there's a lot of speculation that I'm going to be doing here. However, based on the statements that we have concerning this decision that I'm about to talk about, really sounds like it was a huge missed opportunity. Talking about Pokemon XD once again, it was stated during the lead up to XD before it was released by Reggie Fils-Aimé that Pokemon XD was actually not going to be a sequel to Coliseum and was going to be a completely new game with a style similar to that of Ruby and Sapphire. Now, the reason why I say this could have been a huge missed opportunity is because even though Pokemon XD is a great game, and I'm happy that it ultimately came out the way it did, if they were ultimately planning to have a game that was more similar to Ruby and Sapphire than Pokemon Colosseum already was, because as we know, Pokemon Colosseum does play pretty similar to main series Pokemon games. So if they were going to have a game on the GameCube that was more similar to the main series Ruby and Sapphire than Pokemon Colosseum was, that kind of leads me to believe that they were going towards the idea of a home console Pokemon game during the days of the GameCube as a follow-up to Pokemon Colosseum, which, if true, would have obviously been fantastic, and it's a dang shame that it ultimately didn't end up that way. Now, this next one is the one that I probably feel most passionately about because it happened to one of my favorite Pokemon generations and one of my favorite sets of Pokemon games, and that would be the fact that Game Freak left Kalos completely unfinished. Now, say what you want about the legitimate possibility of Pokemon Z, but it's very clear that Game Freak left a ton on the table that ultimately went unused in Pokemon X and Y. We've got everything from the power plant, which looked like it was going to play a much bigger role at a future date with its multiple doors and whatnot, that ultimately didn't get used. We've got the mysterious Koraway train station, which obviously was unused in the game itself, but very much seemed like it was going to be used for a future event, and that didn't happen. We have all of the stuff with Zygarde that ultimately got carried over into Sun and Moon as if it was left over and they didn't want it completely unused, but it definitely seemed like that was originally planned for X and Y. And of course we have the Eternal Flower Floette that was completely programmed into the game, but nothing ever happened with it. Now, in my opinion, Generation 6 is one of the best generations we've ever seen. It's personally right behind Generation 2 as my favorite generation. And the fact that it could have been this much better had all of this stuff been fleshed out and come to fruition is just an absolute shame because the games were already so great. And it ultimately seems like X and Y just kind of became a filler generation as they focused their attention on Sun and Moon. And that really sucks because I don't think you're going to find very many people at all who will say that they would rather have Sun and Moon the way it stands right now over a Pokemon Z type of game in Generation 6 that fleshed out the region that much more and added all of this stuff that ultimately went unfinished. Even though Pokemon X and Y do have their flaws, it does seem amongst the general fan base that they prefer the Kalos games to the Alola games because Sun and Moon are kind of starting to become the butt of a lot of jokes and they're kind of starting to become known as the annoying Pokemon games that are really hard to get through. So the fact that we sacrificed this great potential third version of Kalos with all of this stuff added in for Sun and Moon that ultimately became these really annoying type of games that are hard to finish just really sucks and is a terrible missed opportunity. Now, last on this list is probably the most popular missed opportunity that fans like to talk about, and that would be the fact that we have not seen a full-length Pokemon anime series in the vein of Pokemon Origins and Pokemon Generations. Now, the desire for a more mature Pokemon anime series has been around well before Pokemon Origins was even a thing. But when Pokemon Origins ultimately happened, it gave everyone just a little bit amount of hope that we could one day see a full-length series in this style. Because even though it was short, it was only 4 episodes, people absolutely loved it, and it gave us a lot of optimism that we would see a full-length series like this somewhere down the line. A couple years later, this was followed up with Pokemon Generations, and even though Pokemon Generations is longer in terms of number of episodes, the episodes are only about 5 minutes long each. However, this did not stop Generations from being absolutely fantastic, and frankly, even though it's short, it's everything that Pokemon fans have been dreaming of in terms of an anime series for like the past decade. Now, this is the one pick on this list that really has a chance to redeem itself, because obviously somewhere down the line we very well could see a full-length anime series like that of Pokemon Generations and Origins. And as of right now, until they rectify it with an official announcement of a full series, has gotta be one of Pokemon's biggest missed opportunities ever. So there we have it. Now, while the Pokemon franchise has obviously fared pretty well with the direction it decided to go with these different examples, I can't help but feel a little disappointed that we ultimately didn't get to see these things come to fruition, because I can't help but feel like the franchise would just be in that much better of a state if it had ultimately taken advantage of the opportunities that we just talked about. If you guys enjoyed the video though, be sure to give it a like and let me know in the comments below what you think of this list, what you think of these missed opportunities, which one you personally would like to see happen the most, and if there's another one out there that I didn't mention that you would also really like to see, definitely leave it down below with a comment. Also, as always, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe because I make a ton of Pokemon content each and every week, so there will be no shortage of great videos for you guys to watch. And with all that being said, I will be back with another video very soon, so until then, as always, I will smell you guys later.